Alright, we are going to look at making new cameras and how to animate them so that we have real camera-like movements. So the first thing you're going to do is go to the Create menu and then come down to Cameras and choose Camera. There are other kinds, but we're just going to deal with the basic stuff today. So I'm going to click on Camera, and it always opens up in the origin of your scene. So if you can't see it, press 4, go to wireframe, and it should be pretty obvious where your camera is. If you go to the Move tool, you can lift that up. Right now, we have no idea what the camera is seeing. So in order to fix that, I'm going to start out with actually getting my rotate tool and pointing my camera down at my scene. I still don't know what the camera is actually seeing, but by doing that, when I switch to seeing what the camera sees, it's a little bit easier to find my city instead of just switching it over and having the camera facing off into emptiness. So I'm aiming my camera at the city, and then with the camera selected, I'm going to go to the Panels menu and choose Look Through Selected. Now I'm seeing my city, and you can also see at the bottom of the screen right here, it tells you you are in camera 1 right now. And if I start doing my movements that I'm used to by holding the Alt key and tumbling or panning or dollying, this is actually moving that new camera 1 that I created. You can name cameras, so over in your outline, I'm going to double click on camera 1 and name it the Lisa cam, because now I'm famous. Alright, and then down at the bottom of my screen I can see now that I'm looking through the Lisa cam on here. The next thing I want to do before I worry about animating is turning on my resolution gate so I can see what is actually going to render. So I'm going to come to the View menu, Camera Settings, and then over here I'm going to click on Resolution Gate, and that fades out all the stuff around that's not going to be rendered, so it's a little bit more like looking through the viewfinder of a camera when I turn that on. The last thing I want to do is double check what resolution is my movie going to be rendered at. And that it shows that to me up here when I have that resolution gate turned on. If you want to change it, you're going to come up to your render settings, which is this little cogwheel icon here. And if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I have image size. And by default, this is sitting on the HD 540. And honestly, I don't know what standard film is a 540. I haven't seen one. But if you switch it to the HD 720, that is a standard DVD quality high definition animation, you can see down here that we could customize the pixel if we wanted to, but in this case the preset works fine. And just double check, make sure you're rendering on the Maya software up here while you're in here. I'm going to close that out. Alright, I'm ready to start animating, so I need to decide how do I want my movie to start. So I'm going to scroll out and set up and decide how do I want that animation to begin. I don't want to go so far out that I'm seeing the edges of my world. That kind of takes away from the illusion that I'm actually somewhere. So I'm going to come in a little bit so that I've got basically a horizon line that's kind of happening here. Maybe that's how I want it to start, is something like that. Okay, so animating is similar to how we did it in Animate. We have a timeline that we're going to pay attention to. Remember in Maya they call it the time slider. The thing that is funky is there are not layers in Maya. It's all based on what object you have selected. So when I'm animating, I always make sure I have my outline open so I can double check that I have the object selected that I want to. So in this case, that would be the camera. I want to make sure I have selected. If I accidentally click here and I choose something else and I make keyframes, it's not going to remember the changes I make to the camera. It's going to remember your ground is still sitting there. Your ground is still sitting there. And so when I go to hit play, nothing's going to happen because I wasn't keyframing the camera. So make sure your camera is selected. And then I'm going to come up and change my menu set to animation. And then I have a menu called key. And then there's an option here that says set key. And I'm going to click on that. And it's kind of hard. Oh, guess what? I forgot one other thing. Pay attention to which frame you're in before you go to set your keyframe. So I just started my animation all the way on frame 234, which is like the middle of my animation. So we're going to undo. I'm going to make sure I'm on frame 1. Make sure I'm on the Lisa cam. Then I'm going to come up and set my key. So now I've told it this is where my project is going to start. Now I want to decide what movement do I want to do next. So maybe I want to zoom in on my city. I need to give it time on the time slider to do that. So roughly, how long do I want that zoom to happen? Well, maybe it's 3 seconds. Maya is 24 frames per second, so 24 times 3 is like 72. So if I come in around that 70 mark somewhere and click, so I've selected a new frame, then I'm going to come change my camera by holding Alt and right-clicking and panning just a little bit until I get to maybe this is what I want right here. So if that's what I want, then I can come back up to key and hit set key. And you can see on the time slider I've got 2 of these red marks that are my keyframes. So if I click on frame 1 and hit play, I can see here is my zoom in. You don't have to tell Maya to tween. It's just going to automatically blend the in-between stuff for you. Another thing that's kind of cool, if you don't like the timing, if it's too fast or too slow, hold down Shift and click and drag over that keyframe to select it, and then you can click on it and move where that keyframe is sitting. So I've just spread that out, so my zoom in here should be a lot slower. Or maybe not a lot, but it's a little bit slower as I come and zoom in on my city. And my interesting stuff is actually on the other side of this building right here. So maybe I'll do kind of a pan to get over there. So the key is just pick a new frame on the timeline, change what your camera is seeing, and then come up to key and hit set key. Or once you've done the first keyframe, you can start using S as a keyboard shortcut. Pick a new frame, change what I'm seeing, hit S to make my new keyframe, pick a new frame, change what I'm seeing, and I'm going to zoom in on the door here, hit S to set my keyframe, pick a new frame, change what I'm seeing, hit S to keyframe. So do you get that kind of rhythm that you get going in? Let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to come back and click on frame 1, hit play, and kind of test this out. And it didn't sit there because it just automatically loops, but that's looking pretty good. The last thing I want to throw in here is if you hit play and it's playing really fast or something and you're pretty sure on your math down here, this little running dude in the lower right hand corner is a shortcut to your animation preferences. So it shows you here's the time slider, and by default Maya is 24 frames per second. We don't want to mess with that. But back here under playback, the default is actually set for play every frame. So if you test your animation and it is kind of weirdly fast, you might be on this play every frame. When it is on that, it doesn't actually play 24 frames per second. It plays it as fast as it can. So that will throw off your timing. So you want to make sure that you come in and change this to 24 frames per second times 1. So that's your real time. when you're testing your animation. So I'm going to hit save, and that's how you animate in Maya.